not only in this country, in the entire world, whatever we know, what Bangladesh stands for, everything is wrong. This is a common perception that Pakistan is an Islamic country, Bangladesh is a secular country. But if you look at parameter-wise, Bangladesh is always more Islamic than Pakistan. If you look at the first Islamic university, it happened in Bangladesh, not Pakistan. If you look at the first Islamic bank, it happened in Bangladesh, not Pakistan. Lakhs of people forced to migrate out, thousands died, and violence continued for 6 months. It was so sort of shattering, earth-shattering violence.
This is the same kind of situation in Kashmir also, where there may have been certain compulsions, political compulsions, geopolitical reasons for the Indian state to mollycoddle the local Muslims.
We have to create a new narrative. The narrative of Hindu persecution and minority Chakma persecution, minority persecution in Bangladesh, and a moral case for them. But morality without force is absolutely meaningless.
Namaste Kaushik ji. Welcome once again to Up Close with Upward. I am so glad to be speaking with you today. When I came to know that you've written this new book, I was surprised and I was also very happy because there's a dearth of good books from our side, and just going through the table of contents of this book will tell anyone that this is an extremely important addition to the intellectual discourse in this country, because as we were just speaking, you mentioned that Bangladesh, whatever people know of Bangladesh in this country, even though they are our adjacent, they're just next door neighbors, everything is wrong.
Yes.
So I suppose that is what you are setting out to correct in this book, right?
I'm doing my small effort.
Right.
But I'll correct you a little bit.
Okay.
Not only in this country, in the entire world, whatever we know, what Bangladesh stands for, everything is wrong.
Wow. So, from the cover itself, you have a co-author.
Yes.
Right. And tell us something more about this collaboration. Yeah, how much ever you can tell us.
So, it's a pseudonym. He doesn't want to be named because it is his tapasya. He wants to avoid any sort of spotlight on it.
Okay. Okay.
But he has written another book in Bengali, where second edition is going on. For a Bengali book, it's not very easy thing, right? Without the author being known also, right? And he has written also smaller version of this book, around 30,000 words or so in Bengali in 2018-19. And there he predicted things the way what it would happening now.
Wow.
I waited so long. I was discussing with him all these matters. I'm a Bangladesh watcher for 20 years.
Right.
I was having all the materials, but I never thought of writing the book because people wouldn't accept it. Because Bangladesh is a role model of secularism. What are you saying? Are you crazy? So now that things are falling apart, I thought that I should speak the truth.
Right.
I could not sleep for 2 months for writing the book. I have to do a full-time job, and this writing starts at, let's say 9 o'clock at night, and then it goes on to 2. I have to get up at 6.
That is some inspiration, because, I've been meaning to also write a book, even though I'm not an academic or a scholar like you, but I've been thinking of doing that, but I don't have the kind of discipline that you have. And this is even more admirable.
Thank you.
Right. So this book starts with, even the very first chapter, like we were discussing, which starts with a quote by Amartya Sen, and I'll read out the quote. This is the introduction of the book. He says, in terms of the kind of narrowness of Hindu thinking, it is not reflected in a similar narrowness of Muslim thinking in Bangladesh. So tell me, why did you start your introduction with this wonderful quote by Amartya Sen?
So here's the problem. When Islamism, like we are observing in Bangladesh, happens, we blame these people. But these people are ignorant people. They are very narrow-minded, small people who doesn't know anything, right? Who do not know anything, right? But who gives them the validity? That validity is given by Amartya Sen, like intellectuals, the liberal class, right?
Yeah.
So the problem is not with them. There is always ignorant people in the world.
Right.
But giving them validity by people like Harvard and other places, that is a problem, right? So my book is about the liberals, that they have a worldview and all. And I don't mean to change Amartya Sen because he's too old and I don't think he would change. But the other persons who believe in this, their theory and all, they should look at their theory again, examine them. This is what I told also in my previous book, Majoritarian Myth, that let's see, this is a case study, and let's see what your theory is telling you and what I'm telling you. And you will see that your theory is flawed. So if you are flawed, what do? Correct yourself and get back to the reality.
Correct.
So that is the entire message. But I made it a much more pleasant book to read for all compared to my last book, which was more academic.
Right.
It is this here, the academic part is relegated to the end notes.
Okay.
The cover part is more sort of
this is
story-like reading.
Right. And this is more based on facts and historical events where you've sort of analyzed what exactly was going on and given your perspective on things, right?
No, not my perspective, the perspective of Bangladesh. So I have given only facts and figures from neutral sources and data.
Okay.
And whenever there is an opinion on cultural thinking is required,
right.
I did not borrow from any Hindu source. I borrow from our Bangladeshi or Islamic sources.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. No, I mean borrowing from the sources, but ultimately that's the perspective that you have.
That is
right?
true.
Yeah. So
it's not my opinion. I mean, there is a certain amount of opinion, of course, in any book, but I'm trying to keep it as much and based on Bangladeshi sources as possible.
Right. Got it. Yeah. So the very first section, but before we get into the meat of the book, you mentioned that there is this most of the people are ignorant, and then you have this elite or the intelligentsia, which has a certain view, and that view is thrust upon the masses in that sense. You mentioned about this in your previous book also. But in this case, how does this operate? Why? And for a layman like me, why does an intellectual giant like Amartya Sen, why does he have to push a certain narrative which is not aligned with facts?
So I don't know personally Amartya Sen, but I'll tell you the motivation for the liberal class.
Right.
So if you are sort of working as a boss of the world, right? You need some gundas.
Okay.
And these gundas will do some bad things and will come as a savior and tell your gundas go away. And this is how you will sort of run your administration, right? That's how it works. And this has been confirmed by my friend, Bangladeshi humanist, Abdullah Al-Masood. Abdullah Al-Masood ji, he was a principal of a madrasa in Dhaka. He has left it because he found his humanism is clashing with those ideas. So what he says that when our intellectuals go to Dhaka, they meet a fellow intellectual. And it looks to them that, they are very secular minded, it's sort of same, Bangladesh, India, same sort of thing. But this secular intellectual is more problem than the Islamists, because they want to keep the Islamism in the down layers. They want to give most of the people the education from Aliyah Madrasa or Qaumi Madrasa that keeps them ignorant. But they would not send their own children to those madrasas, right? They will go to good secular posh schools, right? All those sort of things.
Right.
So what is happening here? Say they know that you have to keep these people down, so give them ideas that would not help them to grow up. And they want to give their own children these ideas so that they will rule over them, right? So they want to keep Islamism to a certain extent. Even this is out of Bangladeshi society, but they would not like to also surface it out so that they will be out-tweeted. So they want to keep it like this, right? This is the model.
Very interesting, because in some sense it also operates in Kashmiri society. That, all these leaders of the Tehreek, their kids study abroad. And,
Yeah.
and they go to
Possibly in
posh
London or
schools.
other places. Yeah.
And the average stone thrower in Kashmir, in any part of Kashmir, they go to these, madrasas and
Even in India, right?
yeah.
This is why I see. You was trained in London and all sort of things,
Correct.
right? And if you look at all these intellectuals, right? I mean,
Yeah, true. So now coming to the first section, would you like to tell us about how the book is structured before we deep dive into each section?
So there are 4 sections. First section about this 21st February 1952, which is recognized as the United Nations as the World Mother Language Day.
Okay.
And I've quoted, I'm just paraphrasing. So this day is sort of celebrated as a token of plurality, harmony, existence, all these sort of things, right?
Okay.
I've examined the reality behind all these notions. So this is basically history till from 1947 to 52. Then from 52 to 71, that is the second part, which is called the Joy Bangla Deception of Joy Bangla, I think.
The propaganda of Joy.
Propaganda of Joy Bangla. Then the third section is after 1971 and how sort of intolerance is sort of became a hydra, right? How this guy started from a secularity and it became then a Muslimness, quote unquote, and then it became Islamic State. And then I talked about the persecutions happening on Hindus. One might say, well, Hindus or Muslims, check out history, who is to blame? Look at the Buddhists. They are not in between Hindus and Muslims. The same thing is happening there in Bangladesh, right? There are very tribes like Chakmas who are completely out of Hindu echelon, but still same thing.
Right.
And the last section is of an introspection, how identities are forced out. So this is about the history of Bengali speaking Muslims and how it is kind of going on, the future and all this sort of things.
Right. Very interesting. So, so this very first thing about February 21, 1952, what is the significance of that date? And you've called it a myth. So the chapter itself is titled February 21, 1952, The Narrative versus Reality. So what is this dichotomy about?
So we have read and we have sang. We have sung when we were sort of young. So there are basically there are 4 martyrs whose name is Barkat, Rafiq, Salam, Jabbar. These 4, so the Dhaka University students are marching for recognition of their mother tongue, and the police fired, and these 4 students died, and they are the martyrs, right? And it is sort of implied that Bengali Hindus have not done much for this mother tongue. It is the Bengali Muslims who are sort of doing more. That is sort of implied also, right? Now, firstly, all this language movement did not start from these 4 heroes. It started from a Hindu, actually before independence Congress party member and freedom fighter. His name is Dhirendranath Datta. Dhirendranath Datta is a freedom fighter, and this is a irony for the East Bengali Hindus. They are stuck. They gave so much of their blood, but now either they have to stay in a country as second-class citizen, or they have to sort of leave their home and hearth and come as to refugee, right? So ordinary people took the second route, those who have means and all these sort of things. Extraordinary people like Dhirendranath Datta, they thought that we have to fight even at the adverse circumstances. And he was not alone. There is a coterie. They called themselves Pakistan National Congress. He was one of them. Now, these Dhirendranath Datta, he was sort of, when he was elected to the Pakistan Constituent Assembly, and when they met, these people from Pakistan National Congress, they put different legal notions in the idea of Pakistan. Dhirendranath Datta brought the idea of language. He said that in this country, 2/3 of the people speak Bengali. Urdu cannot be the national language. It was quite upsetting for the Muslim League, Prime Minister Liaquat Ali Khan and others. Interestingly, no Bengali speaking Muslim League member of the assembly supported him. It was only the Hindu members who supported him. Everyone was sort of for Urdu.
Wow.
And this happened in 1948. Now, Dhinanand Datta eventually was killed very brutally in 1971 by the Pakistani army. He was called Sahid. But he is not the headline in Bangladesh. He is rather a footnote. This guy was also there. There is no
sense of being the pioneer.
He should be the headline.
Right.
That is not there, right? So when I talk about Bangladesh, he says, yeah, we also say Sahidin. But you always, but in the central monuments of Dhaka, it is only this Barkat Rafiqa, Jabbar, Sajad and Jabbar. It's not Dhirendranath Datta.
Right.
So that part is completely lost.
Right. So,
secondly, look at that day, these 4 people, the so-called martyrs, what are they? Now, one of them, Abul Barkat, was a Dhaka University student, no problem there. But the other people who died, 8 people died, 8 sort of said. 2 are very young children. One of these other people who came to Dhaka to buy some medicines for mother-in-law. Another person came to do some shopping for his own marriage. One person was going to work and then suddenly was shot. He was a sort of school dropout, so he was not even in the game of language. So, Dhaka University. So, the idea that Dhaka University student marched on and these 4 died, that is completely fallacious, right? It's completely untrue.
Wow. Okay.
And 50 years have passed after Bangladesh have been established. There is no white paper, no sort of fact-finding to do the real story. Whatever I am saying is based on Bangladeshi newspapers, how they are reporting. These are not my version or anything like that. But this obviously doesn't look like a sort of a genuine thing, right?
Right.
Second thing is, there is a dissident called Lal Khan. He says that 26 people actually died that day. The other bodies were disposed of.
Okay.
Now, who are these other people? It's possible that they are not sort of certain religious background. That's why their bodies were dumped. And these are sort of highlighted, right? Yeah. It's not impossible.
Yeah. Certainly. So
there's more, but you want to?
No, so is it, are you saying that there was a protest and there was this demand for recognition of Bangla, but this was led by the Hindus?
It is very much possible that Hindus have taken a bigger role than what is being portrayed. And definitely these 4 persons, they are not martyrs. All of them are not martyrs.
No, so what I'm asking is, what was the violence really about?
Violence is about language, but who was leading it?
Right.
That's number 1. Number 2 is they are talking about Bengali because they were interested in official jobs and other things. That's what it comes out from their statements. But are they really in favor of mother tongue of all? If we are talking about International Mother Tongue Day, then these people have to be mother tongue for all people, right? Not for only themselves. If you look at Bangladesh, there is only one language that is recognized, that is Bengali. No other language is recognized. If you look at Russia, it has a lesser population than Bangladesh. It has 35 languages recognized. If you go to Switzerland, 1/10 of Bangladesh population, 4 languages recognized. If you come to West Bengal, same context. Here also 8-9 languages are recognized at different levels. In Bangladesh, no language is recognized. Right after Bangladesh was established, just 2 months after, one person from a Chakma tribe, leader of the Chakma tribe, Manomendra Larma, he came to Mujib. He was also member of the parliament. He came to Mujib, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and said that Chakmas enjoys autonomy and their own language in the Mughal period, in the British period, everywhere, even in the Pakistan period to an extent. Let us have that autonomy. He was told by Mujib, go away, be Bengalis. Just a 2-minute encounter, this was told to him. So they don't respect any other language but theirs. So they are not for mother tongue. They are for imposing own tongue on others. Right? So when United Nations is celebrating as the World Mother Tongue Day, so it is a sort of a slap on the face of a Chakma victim who actually suffered big genocide in their home.
Very strange, very strange. Okay, so now, given that, given the facts that you've just shared about this whole Bangla business, what is then the basis of Bangladesh's need for independence from Pakistan?
No, that's a very good question. Actually, if you look at Bangladesh, it is not at all, there's no demand of Bangla has no role in creation of this country. Pakistan has given all the recognition to Bengali in their 1956 constitution. Okay, that was the first time constitution was made. It was changed again 1962, but there's nothing happened to Bangla. Bangla enjoyed the same status as Urdu. And they have done it very, very rigorously. In all the Pakistani currencies, Bangla was there. In all the Pakistani coins, stamps, Bangla was there. There are two national monuments Ayub Khan built in Pakistan. One is called Minare Pakistan, that is in Lahore, where the Lahore resolution was done by the Muslim League. Second one is Karachi. It is called Mazar-e-Qaid or Jinnah Mausoleum, where basically Jinnah and other important people's tombs are there, right? Both the places, I have given pictures here, Bengali and Urdu, they are equally sort of importantly put in all the mausoleums. And there is a chief minister of Awami League, his name is Ataur Rahman Khan. He has written a book, like 300-page book, on the tyranny of the army rule in Bangladesh. He has only one paragraph on atrocities of Bangla. And what is that atrocity? In courts, you hear the English. Well, that is to every post-colonial country.
Correct.
It is not Urdu against Bengali, right? It is basically English against everyone else.
Correct.
So this idea is completely flawed. Now, what happened to creation of this Pakistan is basically, I'll tell you the gist. The Pakistan is run by the army. Right? It used to be and is also now, right?
Yeah.
And the main coterie is the Punjabi Muslims, right? Punjab.
Yes.
Now, because it is happening, the focus is on development of West Pakistan. And here sort of this neglect. And there is also a big geographical barrier, right? May not be everything is intentional from the West Pakistan. Because of geographical barrier, things tend to be very different, right? If you look at North Korea, South Korea, they were the same people.
Correct.
But now they are very different people. The language is completely different. Heights are sort of 6 inches lower one group than other group. So this sort of a thing. Similar thing was happening, the inequality was deepening. Now what is happening? The prices were going up because West Pakistan prices were higher. And that prices used to sort of rule also in the East Pakistan. So for the lower section of the population, they are upset because of price rise. Middle section was upset because in the clerical jobs, in all the government jobs, their numbers were sort of shrinking. That have given statistics and all these things. In the top echelon, the politicians, they were deprived of power by the army. Army got all the power, right? So these people are not anywhere. So everyone is upset. And this upset, everyone was upset. This came out by Mujibur Rahman. He sort of launched something called 6 points program in 1966. Each of these 6 points is about economic empowerment of East Pakistan. More jobs, federal sort of 2 reserve banks, different currencies, everything is economic. There is not a word on Bangla, right? And this was going on, and then what happened that Mujibur actually won the election, and Pakistan army sort of thought, and this is what I have quoted a Major General Khadim Hussain Raja. He was sort of a more moderate guy, but he wrote a book, Stranger in My Country, and he left before the Operation Searchlight, the violence in March 1971.
Okay.
In that book, even this moderate guy, he is saying Hindus are all the problems of this place. Hindus are causing everything. So it is against Hindus in every page. It is published by Oxford University Press.
Wow.
Okay. Now, if Hindus are doing everything, so their idea was Awami League is getting like 56, 57% of the vote, someone in the 50s, because there is a Hindu population of 15% or so. And this Hindu population is more than 15% because they are more prosperous. Even after so much looting and all, still they are more prosperous. More importantly, Muslim women that time did not vote.
Okay.
They are not used to vote. But
They were not allowed to vote, or they were not?
Culturally, it was sort of not thought of as sort of, there's a male dominance more in those societies, right?
Okay.
And and this is, I have given research paper. This is a phenomenon all across. It is acknowledged by different research papers. And Hindu women, so this is more than 15%. And secondly, Hindus are more in the intellectual class, right? So they, in a democracy, they form the opinion through newspapers and all, right? And this used to happen. So they thought, Pakistan thought, that let's get rid of the Hindus. And then we will sort of fix the entire thing. What they did not expect, that Indira Gandhi will eventually, being compelled by so much refugees and all, will actually take a very bold step of fighting them. And he had a very capable general, Sam Manekshaw, who did everything very well, right? Now what happened after the surrender of the Pakistani army, all these 93,000 soldiers, they are all transported to India in Indian jails. So the entire East Pakistan is an empty land dominated by Indian army. Now geostrategically, Mujib has no option but to propose something feasible alternative. Mujib never went out of his country. He was staying in the Pakistani jails. He never left the country. Many Mukti Yoddhas left, but he never left, right? So it could have been always be argued from his part that I never tried to damage the country, right? And he gave mixed signals. To some people, in the private, he said, I am a Muslim leaguer. I don't want to damage the country. And in public, he was saying, no, he was cursing the Punjabis and Biharis. So these are sort of, there are two faces and all, right? Many politicians have.
Correct.
But he also had that. Now, he could always have argued that. But now the Indian army have got all the control. He had no choice but to propose something like a sort of acceptable solution to India, right? And the only and this is a high time of socialism. The Soviet Russia also helped in creation of Bangladesh by blocking American 7th Fleet. So he sort of said the most, sort of it's a balancing act, I say, the speech he gave. He sort of said that I'm a Muslim and all, but this will be sort of a Bengali nation, right? And this is how this nation started.
Wow. Actually, I can't help but, make parallels in my mind between what was happening in Bangladesh and what transpired in Kashmir. The parallels between Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and Sheikh Abdullah are very striking.
Very striking, yes.
And the love-hate relationship that they had with the Pakistani establishment is also there. And then being in exile.
But I'll tell you something more. A few days ago, a very senior professor in the probably most prestigious Indian academic institute, I am not naming it, wrote in a social media post, Bangladesh is a secular country. He's a Bengali. The guy who wrote is a Bengali. As a matter of fact, Bangladesh has its state religion Islam for 4 decades or so. But this is a common perception that Pakistan is an Islamic country, Bangladesh is a secular country.
Right.
But if you look at parameter wise, Bangladesh is always more Islamic than Pakistan.
Right.
If you look at the laws, they are all derived from the British laws, where criminal laws are British and civil laws are given by Sharia, right? So there is no difference. If you look at the first Islamic university, it happened in Bangladesh, not Pakistan.
Right.
If you look at the first Islamic bank, it happened in Bangladesh, not Pakistan. If you look at Friday as the weekly holiday, it happened in some time in Pakistan, but they withdrew it. They thought that it's a loss they are making in the financial market because international markets go on like Saturday, Sunday closure. Bangladesh is religiously pursuing it for last 4 decades, in spite of all the loss. And their prominent newspapers say there is a loss, but of course for ethical reasons they have to do it. So I'm saying that if you look at any parameter wise, Bangladesh is not sort of less secular. It is more secular. It is more Islamic. But perception is actually otherwise, right?
True.
In fact, one of the persons who wrote a foreword to my book is Dr. Richard Benkin, human rights activist.
We've done a video with him.
I know.
Yeah.
And this is more for the audience.
Yeah.
And he actually wrote a book on Bangladesh also, right?
The quiet case of ethnic cleansing.
Yes, exactly. So he says in the Pew surveys, Bangladeshi Muslims were found no less radical than Pakistanis.
Right. True. So coming back to the parallels that I was thinking about, you have mentioned about this hoax of Joy Bangla and similar. Yeah, Kashmiriyat, exactly.
So actually, this is what you have brought the point. I knew you would appreciate it. You have the lived experience. I don't. So basically, this is not about Bengal or Bangla. This is about hijacking of identities, right? So you had this Kashmiri identity, your father and forefathers had. You are still probably having it. But if you don't mind, I anticipate a diminish in that identity from your son onwards, right? There will be Delhi, Mumbai, or Mumbai girls, right?
True.
So Kashmiri identity will be, Kashmir did not have any Muslim before 800 AD or something like
Yes.
that, right? Raj Tarangini, right? But it had completely Hindu culture. It had a sort of a Sharda, the Hindu script.
Yeah.
Sharda is the Saraswati, right? It is to be the place of learning and all. That culture is gone. But the Kashmiriyat will sort of be transformed from that to this, right?
Yes.
So that it is like imperialism.
Yes.
Imperialists come take your land. Here the same thing happening in the
Yes.
grab of identities,
Right.
which is sanctified by the leftists.
Yeah. True,
Right.
True.
So essentially the same thing is happening elsewhere also. This
Yes.
is not the story of only Bengal. It is happening every place.
Yes.
Here it is happening in so major way. In management we call it a case study. So this is a case study, but everybody sort of should learn from it.
Yeah. Interesting that you spoke about the Kashmiri identity and how the next generation of Kashmiri Pandits will become more non-Kashmiri than Kashmiri. Recently, my son, he was in a football game with another kid who was Muslim.
Mhm.
He's a Kashmiri Muslim.
I see.
And the Kashmiri Muslim kid tells him that, oh, you are Kashmiri. Oh, but you are only 1/4 Kashmiri. So he asked him, why am I 1/4
Why
Kashmiri?
1/4? Your
Because,
mother, huh?
because the true Kashmiri is Kashmiri Muslim.
Huh.
Then apparently, I don't know who told him, but half Kashmiri is Kashmiri Sikhs because there's a lot of Sikhs who
I
have
see.
stayed
Jammu,
back.
they're in Jammu, right?
No, but even in Kashmir, a lot of Sikhs stayed back.
Huh.
And you are only 1/4 because you are-
So I'll tell you something, the Bangladesh parallel. So in West Bengal, people think that we are all equal Bengalis, West Bengali, Bangla speaking population and the... But I have quoted sources there. And essentially in Bangladesh, the Hindus are called Indians. So someone whose forefathers never from India, who have stayed there all along, they are called Indians.
Wow.
One American professor, researchers, Yvette Claire Rosser, you might be knowing him, of course.
Of course.
She visited Bangladesh in 1999-2000, right? And she made a dissertation and she got doctorate on the basis of that. University of Texas at Austin. So she writes that someone came to him and say, oh, meet my Indian friend. So she first thought that this guy probably a tourist from India or something like that. Then it became clear this guy never went to India, nor his forefather, nobody. But because he's a Hindu, he's being called an Indian, right?
Wow.
And more or less all the Hindus are raw agents and all these things.
Yeah,
There's a popular saying, all the Hindus having 1 foot on India. And this is an urban saying, but this is reported by Prothom Alo, which is the biggest newspaper in Bangladesh.
Wow.
So, I mean, you see the sources, right?
Yeah.
But Muslims are Bengalis. So, this 1/4 thing, I think it is coming. It has already come probably, but yeah.
So, you mentioned all these names, Suravardi and others.
Mhm.
Tell us about these characters, what role they played in the formation of this new revolution and the separation of Bangladesh.
So I'll tell you first one big myth we all have. When you talk about Pakistan, we associate it with Punjab and the western provinces. Some associate with Aligarh and Syed Ahmed Khan. But politically, this entire thing started in Bengal at Dhaka.
Right.
Dhaka, the Nawab of Dhaka, Salimullah, he was the prime backer of the Muslim League movement, right? Political party, All India Muslim League. And there are two basically Muslim classes. One is basically the Ashraf, the other is Atraf. Ashrafs are the elite people, very upper echelons, and Atrafs are more like peasantry and folks, professionals. And then what happened? The Ashraf class was sort of respected and talked about. They used to lead Muslim League. So Sohrawardi was an Ashraf, Mujib was an Ashraf, and so on and so forth. Atraf class, the important person was Fazlul Haq. Fazlul Haq, he started a party, he is called Krishak Praja Party. Krishak Praja Party was sort of a more secular demand sort of party. It is more about some right for the peasants and all these of people. But most of the peasants in Bengal that time, undivided Bengal, were Muslims. And it was a, so I would say that Fazlul Haq was more of a nuanced character. It is not that he was a completely secular person or something like that, but largely he used to be the most fair-minded persons to the Hindus. One very famous scientist was Prafulla Chandra Ray. Prafulla Chandra Ray was a very big chemist. He has a Bengal Chemical, which is a big factory also.
Right.
So he told in one occasion, I mentioned here, quoted, that basically I see that Fazlul Haq is sort of will bring harmony between Hindus and Muslims because he had both. He had the Bengaliness in him, or he is also Muslim. So he's more of a syncretic person. In the 1937 elections, which were conducted after the Government of India Act was passed, Congress was the largest party by contesting in the Hindu seats only. Prisha Party got almost everybody from the Muslim seats, but they are the largest party among the largest Muslim party. Muslim League was actually behind them.
Okay.
Now, Fazlul Haq wanted to make a government joining hand with Congress, but the big visionaries of Congress, they said that no, we won't allow it. And that was a big setback for Fazlul Haq. Fazlul Haq was a very smart person. He anticipated that the moment he forged an alliance with Muslim League, his party would be lost. It would be gobbled up by the Muslim League, which actually happened. So he proposed this, but what happened that because Congress refused, he had no choice but to join hand with Muslim League. And this sort of went on for 2-3 years. But Muslim League was globbling up and plotting to sort of a coup and move him from the post of the, that time is to call Prime Minister, essentially the Chief Minister. So in anticipation of that, he made another alliance with Forward Bloc, the Subhas Bose's party, and also Syama Prasad Mukherjee's Hindu Mahasabha. And they sort of dumped Muslim League and formed a new government. This was going well, but the problem is that when these parties were going this direction, it is sort of, British did not like it. Okay. British, they are seeing that they wanted to always have this divide and rule. The only province that could be potentially sort of run by Muslim League government was Bengal. And they wanted to sort of do some problem to Fazlul Haq government. And it happened. Now, many people, I just wanted to say one misconception about Fazlul Haq. Fazlul Haq brought the Pakistan motion in 1940. So many people, maybe justifiably, they think that he was the most bigoted guy. But actually, he was the most liberal guy among the Muslims. He brought the motion just to make him not an pariah in this Muslim society and Muslim circles, right? And you have to remember another thing. 1940, the Muslim Pakistan proposal was more of a bargaining chip. It was not really the separate nation has to happen. People thought that it's a bargaining chip, something bigger has to be sort of be, get awarded because of this proposal, right? So then what happened that Fazlul Haq eventually government fell, Syama Haq government, and then eventually Muslim League came back. And this premier of this Muslim League government was Sohrawardy. Sohrawardy was sort of the very, he did not speak Bengali. He used to, Mujib wrote in his own autobiography that he used to speak in broken Bengali only. But Mujib used to speak Bengali. But so he was the leader and he was the guru of Mujib, right? And under his stewardship, he was the premier. And 1946, when Muslim League's demand for Pakistan came to a halt because Congress did not agree, Muslim League said that they will bring anarchy on the streets. They will kill law. They will bring lawlessness. They will kill everyone. And this is a test of terror, right? And then, of course, they would be tried. And where did they try it? They tried in the only province. There are 15 provinces there at that time in the undivided India. The only province that was ruled by Muslim League was Bengal. This is, in fact, not everyone knows, right? It was not Punjab, it was not Sindh, it was Bengal. And of course, the capital of Bengal was Kolkata. So, and they said that it's a direct action. On the day of 16th August, they brought all the gundas hooligans from all over Bengal, and they did many other things like Sohrawardi, he called it a holiday, government holiday for his own party program, strange, and then he transferred all the police officers overnight in the Kolkata region and replaced them by Muslim officers, right? And it is on that day, this is a bloodbath. So the idea is twofold, bifold. One is, of course, to show Britishers their power. Second is Calcutta that time was the second best city, second most prosperous city after London in the entire British Empire. So it has to be claimed as the capital, right? As the Pakistan. That was the goal. So if this sort of a bloodbath happens, then the Hindus will leave and then they will sort of claim it. First day it worked like that. Thousands died, many women persecuted, and Hindus were sort of banking upon police and other things which never came. And then 17 August, Hindus learned that. I think the only good thing about the Hindus, the only good thing, is they sometimes learn from their mistakes, sometimes. So they learned that nothing is going to come. So they have to do themselves. Thankfully, that time, the Bengalis were not that intellectuals. They used to go to gyms. I mean, that time it's called Vyam Shala.
Of course.
But basically, our idea of gymnasium.
Yeah.
And one of the persons who took part was actually a nephew of a freedom fighter. His name is Gopal Mukhopadhyay.
Right.
His
Gopal
uncle,
Patha.
Gopal Patha, we call it, because he had a Patha, basically meat shop, right? That's why we call it. But he was not many know about it, but he was basically a nephew of a freedom fighter, Onukul Mukherjee, who actually looted British arms and all.
So Gopal Patha was actually a Brahmin.
Who is a Brahmin, but these castes are sort of very less important in some...
No, I'm just about his antecedents.
Antecedents are like that, but he may not be called Bhadralok.
Okay.
We have this Bhadralok notion,
Right,
because
right.
he used to run a meat shop.
Yeah.
In spite of being a Brahmin, he would not be a Bhadralok, right? That because of my English accent, I will be cancelled as Bhadraloki also. So that sort of a thing. Now, he forced out the resistance and it went on very well. So basically, Hindus came out and some Sikhs also joined. There are many Sikhs in Kolkata. And eventually, what happens, 18th and 19th, it was mostly Muslims who suffered because, eventually Hindus are majority and they got the idea that we have to resist actively and all. Now, the entire episode, so because of this region, Kolkata did not go to Pakistan.
Yeah.
This is a very important thing. And 1 year after that, we got independence, right?
Yes.
And of course, Sohrawardi conducted other massacres, other genocides, one in Noakhali. Noakhali, the entire district were cut short after 2-3 months. And then basically thousands sort of massacred and many converted. So the point I'm trying to say that this guy Sohrawardi, he was the kingpin of massacres, lawlessness, genocide. And this is what I posed the question in the introduction. If you go to Germany, Mein Kampf is a banned book. Having a tiniest bit of Nazi association makes you a pariah, right, in Germany. Why do they do that? Because they don't associate the shame of Nazi shames with the future generations, right? So they want to cut off that history. But if you look at Bangladesh, these people who have done genocides, now you might say, well, you are a Hindu, you are blaming Sohrawardi, there's another part of the story. No, I'm sorry to say, there is no other part of the story. For 16th August, suppose you think that all the Hindus who talked about that, they are liars. So I will not take any Hindu testimony. I will only look at the Muslim testimonies and what the Muslims are saying. If you look at a very famous person, Badruddin Umar, he wrote hundreds of books, very learned man. He was that day there. He said the massacre was done by Muslims. That day, started by Muslims, 16th August. There's a lady professor of Babon College, Muslim lady professor. She also said the same thing. And most importantly, Abul Mansur Ahmed, this is a character one will find recurrently in my book. He was an editor of a Bengali daily in Kolkata. He was with Muslim League. He became big. He was a cabinet minister in Pakistan. He was very close to Mujib, very close to Mujib. And he actually got the National Award in Bangladesh. He said in his autobiography, in my view, the responsibility lies with Muslim League. He was himself a Muslim League, right? Cannot be any bigger testimony than that.
Correct.
And this person, Sohrawardi, is honored in Dhaka now. The most prominent park in Dhaka is called Sohrawardi Udyan.
Wow.
Right? So that's what I'm trying to tell, that United Nations puts this country as a notion of harmony, tolerance, pluralism. But if you just visit Dhaka, most prominent place, Sohrawardi Udyan, it is absolutely a Nazi idea what is going on there.
You said something very interesting, that Hindus are fast learners, but I think they are
not fast, sometimes.
Sometimes they learn, but they always forget.
That is also there.
So
I think this is another book I have intent to write. So the idea is Hindus are based on what we call empirics driven worldview. There you update yourself all the moment, right? And there you can also forget because there is no memory happening in the recent times or something, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, you look at the people of the book, they had a more of a theory-driven way. So they go back always to their own past, own scriptures to learn and refer to that always, right? That is sort of...
No, but I think that even in the Hindu tradition, scriptures have a very important place. The reason we forget is because we have forgotten the scriptures.
That is also another part, that we have lost the social context and all.
Yes.
But what I'm trying to say that I would still say that Hindu scriptures would change. That we sort of believe in. That no, we cannot really go back to the Manusmriti. We have to create a new Smriti for this era from scientific understanding and reality.
Oh, I have a slightly different take there, Kaushik. When we look at our Dharmashastras, those Dharmashastras may not be applicable to the current era in toto. But when we look at them, we look at them with reverence and say that we are not able to match the standards that Manusmriti sets on the conduct of an individual and the kind of society that it envisages. We are not worthy of that. But we don't, at least the traditionalist view of the Hindu is that when you look back at the past, or forget about the past, when you look at the structures, the scriptures are the gold standard, and you accept that, okay, we can't match that gold standard. But I don't agree with the view that scriptures are modifiable or that new scriptures must be written, because new scriptures means you can write new commentaries, you can contextualize, you can do more tikas and things like that. But the fundamentals remain the same. They cannot change.
Yes, okay, we might have a disagreement and all, but I'll just try to, one last point. Yeah, it is possible that you have to contextualize, but it is also possible that you might have to sort of interpret it in a vastly different way. So I'll give an example. Medhatiti was the last known commentator of Manusmriti, and Medhatiti wrote also that some of the things has to be interpreted in the terms of that day. He said that now the states are sort of more important now, so the one king must actually attack the neighboring king if it is of a different culture, if it is an intolerant culture. So in a way, he was also extending sort of for a new sort of way of looking at things. Right?
No, that's what I'm saying. So every time you have to contextualize and you have to
I'm not being disrespectful to Manusmriti, but I'm saying that we have to take that lessons and all. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing or anything like that, I'm not ever saying. But I'm saying that implementation, that we can go back to some golden age, that may not be also true. We have to evolve in a good way, scientific way.
Which is what I'm saying. That, if you look at the meta-narrative of the Hindu society, it is that you have come from the Satyuga to the Kali Yuga.
Exactly.
So there is a decline.
There is a technology evolving, and that will change the human beings, of course.
So technology is one of the players. But that there is a decline in dharma itself is very, very evident, and it's also very clearly stated.
It's cyclical also.
It's cyclical, but those cycles are of vastly different
magnitudes. And all.
Yeah. So when we are looking at Kali Yuga itself and we are saying that, oh, we are in this first phase and now it will get more intense. So obviously dharma will decline. But the traces of dharma that remain will have to be derived from the scriptures only. Because we actually have this another podcast series internally that we do. We are not very regular with it, but that is Dharma 101, where we try and understand it in layman terms. Obviously, it's not an authoritative view of dharma, but we try and understand. And in that churn, what I've understood is that this empirical view or the positivist view has a very limited, I mean, in terms of the pramana system, you have the pratyaksh pramana, you have you have the shastra pramana, and you have the
Aptavakya.
No, Aptavakya is the shastra pramana.
I mean, just saying it.
Aptavakya and Yukti.
Pratyaksha, Aptavakya, and then simile, some allegory sort of.
Inference.
Inference, yes.
The Yukti, the reasoning. So the reasoning and the Pratyaksh, whatever you are getting from the sense organ, they apply to the world of science. And they are very much part of the pramana. But it is always the shastra which overrules these two. Because then, when it comes to Shruti especially, there you cannot argue because those are things which are, I mean, from a scientific point of view, they are claims. And you will never be able to establish those claims.
So, I mean, so this is the last point. Maybe it is going too much out of way.
Of course.
I'm a little argumentative Bengali also. I mean, you can edit it out if it is absolutely needed. But what I'm trying to say that, so let's say this world, how many layers are there? So the Hindus, they say there are 3 layers. This is the gross layer, physical layer. This is the sthula. And then our mind is there, sukshma. And then there's another layer called karana, even sort of layer. Now, why Shrutis are so revered? Because they are sort of the hallmark of the karana and the sukshma stages that you cannot infer from this part. So that is, Shrutis are fine. But the smritis, which is sort of social policies, they have to contain the Shrutis effectively to actually people to lead to Shruti and that level of experiential. But it has to be also context specific. We are lost at that Fazlul Haq and Suraburdi thing.
Yeah. So, tell us more about this dream of Greater Bangladesh. What is that about?
Extremely important thing. So, you see the Yunus, right? He was saying about 7 sisters and all, right?
Yes, yes. So I believe there is a resolution also that they passed in the parliament, right?
I mean, they could parlance anything. It's an unelected government at the end of the day.
No, long back. Not this. The resolution.
Long back, there's no resolution per se. I'll tell you what happened. So, Bhasani was the founder of Awami League.
Okay.
That time used to call Awami Muslim League. And Bhasani was sort of a very, very revered person in Bangladesh.
Okay.
And not only in Bangladesh, in West Bengal also. The Communist Party that ruled us for 34 years, last year also they celebrated Bhasani. They knew that he was a nationalist, not an internationalist like them. Still they thought that he is a very important person. And it is also there, his ideas are also celebrated in New York and other places. Many Bangladeshis are very uncomfortable with Rabindranath Tagore's song, Amar Sonal Bangla, that is their national anthem. We know why they are uncomfortable, of course.
Of course.
But the alternative that is being proposed by one person, Prince Mahmud, he was saying this is, so there the lines are like, Bangladesh is the dream of Bhasani. So Bhasani is sort of the father figure, right, in some sense. So when Bangladesh was carved out in 1972, the Mujibur Rahman taking over, that time Bhasani was in India. And in India, he said, so basically like Jinnah said, right, the Pakistan is, this Pakistan is truncated and moth-eaten. Similarly, Bhasani said, this Bangladesh's borders are incomplete, its ideas are incomplete unless we acquire West Bengal, Assam and Tripura. Right? So the Greater Bangladesh, he started that right at the founding of Bangladesh, right? One more thing. The proposed Bangladeshi flag in 1971, it has its boundary marked. 1972, they abrogated that flag. The figures are there in my book. Why? Because the moment you keep the borders fixed, you can't really expand, right?
Correct. So that's why they have this circle now.
Circle on. I mean, circle, within the circle, there was a map there, right?
Right.
The third, of course, another person is extremely celebrated in Bangladesh now. It is called Samsuddin Ilyas Sahib. He was a Turk king He was from the Sistan region of Iran.
Okay.
And he came in the 14th century or so. 13th or 14th century, he established the kingdom in Bengal. His empire was sort of what a few days ago, one of the ministers, advisors of Bangladesh circulated in December a map in social media, which basically shows that West Bengal, Odisha, Jharkhand, Bihar, northeastern states are part of this greater Bangladesh. Northeast nahi tha, but other places were sort of part of this Ilyas Sai thing. And Ilyas Sai is celebrated as the true Bengali, this Turk. So the narrative is that he married a lady, apparently that girl was Bengali. So that's sort of a thing they now. So this is going on in Bangladeshi circles, right? And it was even more interesting. One of the very famous literateurs of Bengal was Annoda Shankar Ray. He was an ICS officer, and he asked Mujib, when did you get the idea of Bangladesh on? Mujib said, I got that on from the United Bengal proposal of 1947. So those who may not know, so basically after this massacres on, Sama Prasad said that we have to break, we have to sort of partition Bengal, and Hindus, Bengali Hindus, they should have their homeland, West Bengal, right, carved out. And Indian National Congress, the Bengali leadership, they came completely unison with Sama Prasad, Autullo Ghosh, Vidhan Chandra Roy. Also, there are some level-headed socialists like Meghnad Saha, scientist. He was also from a small party, it's called Revolutionary Socialist Party. They also came together. So all these people came for West Bengal. Now that time, the Muslim League, they sort of understood that this, Calcutta, Great Calcutta killing actually turned things against them. So they proposed another alternative. They said, let's make United Bengal. That will be separate from Bengal and, India and Pakistan. That will be like entire Bengal, right? And Mujib is saying the idea of Bangladesh comes from there. Right?
Right. So that is fairly evident.
That is fairly evident. Now, of course, Mujib is a practical person. He's a real politic person. As I told you, all politicians, almost all politicians have two things. One in mind, one is in, words. Mujib never said it. To his credit, he never said this greater Bangladesh beyond what I have said. And this is only in a private conversation only. Now, what happened? Mujib understood the geostrategic reality that Bangladesh is surrounded by India on four sides, and India, however bad it was that days or even now, whatever it is much, much greater than Bangladesh. Even as, even the tiniest brain would understand.
Except in the minds of Amartya Sen.
Except the minds of Amartya Sen, of course. They don't live in this world.
Right.
Anyway, he doesn't live in Bangladesh also. He lived in Bangladesh in some years in his youth when he was very little, like, 5, 6, something like that.
Yeah. He's carrying that nostalgia.
Nostalgia, yeah. Quite a nostalgia.
Yeah.
Now, what happened then if you look at this Bangladesh's, this idea of this greater Bangladesh, it is apparent in there all these things, but what I will say, most importantly, the idea of Joy Bangla. Joy Bangla to a Bengali, and there are many Bengali organizations who think that India is oppressing them and all, and Joy Bangla means Bengali pride to Bengali language and all, right? Now, I have quoted a Awami League politician in 2018. He was a very good, big, powerful minister in Hasina cabinet that time. He said, Joy Bangla cannot be a slogan of the Hindus. It has to be a slogan of the Muslims. Why? He explained. Because when Prophet Muhammad conquered the pagan Makkah, that time he said, Fatun Makkah, means conquest of Makkah. And he said that Prophet his mother tongue was Arabic, mine is Bengali. So instead of Fatun Bengal, I would say Joy Bangla.
Oh, that's profound.
That's profound, right?
Yeah. Right. That explains.
No, of course, this talk would not happen in polite circles and polite conversations and all. But underneath, so one of the mainstream journalists who wrote a book on on Bangladesh, he said that he used to think that this Joy Bangla, this greater Bangladesh is a right-wing sort of conspiracy theory. And he acknowledged then conversation that now all these things are happening, maps are being circulated. it cannot be all that conspiracy. He lived in Bangladesh for many years and all, right?
Yeah. So he's acknowledged. He's a Hindu?
He's a Hindu.
Ah, okay. So that is, as far as the greater Bangladesh dream is concerned.
Hindu by birth, I mean.
Oh, okay.
I mean, name-wise.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know
course.
his sort of.
Of course. So in 1971, after Bangladesh got liberated, in that period there was a lot of violence against the Hindus and other minorities. So can you give us an overview of that as well, about how the violence erupted, or from 1947 to 1971, how was how were the minorities treated, what major events were there, and finally then we'll come to the post creation of Bangladesh period.
Okay, so till 1971,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So now you see, there's a very nice saying by one historian here. He used to teach in Delhi University, Saradindu Mukherjee. He was an ICSSR personnel, right?
Yes.
You must be knowing him. He says that Pakistan, it was in Jhatka, and in Bangladesh it's in Halala. Halal, right? Why? Because Pakistan there was a minority, but at one stroke in 1947 it became 2% or less.
Yeah.
But in Bangladesh, it's a halal going on, right? It was 28% in 1947. It has come down today at 8%, right?
Yeah.
It did not happen overnight. As a matter of fact, this is more important than this, what you said. I mean, this is little related. The first census British did in 1871. In that census, in United Bengal region, the number of Hindus, Bengali-speaking Hindus were 18 million, 1 crore 80 lakhs. Number of Muslims, Bengali-speaking Muslims were 17 million. So Hindus were more than 50%. 150 years later, now Hindu Bengalis are less than 1/3. So from being more than 50%, it is sort of less than 1/3.
Are you talking about the full Bengal region?
Full Bengal region, right? West Bengal and Bangladesh together. So it cannot happen naturally, right?
Yes, certainly.
So there has to be a lot of genocides and all, right?
Yes.
So this is some we'll talk about.
Yeah.
So of course 1947, what happened, all the massacres. I'm not even going there, but of course this Calcutta killing and then Noakhali massacre and all, right? Then what happened? In 1950, a very big massacre happened, and basically the upper classes, they are gone from Bangladesh that time. So it was mostly about Motuas, Namasudros, we call them. They were staying there, and they have been told by one follower of Ambedkarji. His name is Jogendranath Mondol. Jogendranath Mondol was given a cabinet ministership in Pakistan, and he said that nothing is going to happen. It will be a beautiful cooperation between the Matuas and the Muslims in this East Pakistan. And then what happened? 1950. I have produced his resignation letter, part of it in the end note. In the Bengali version, we have produced the entire thing. Now, this he is sort of describing how things were unfolding. It is so shocking, so sort of terrifying, so brutal. I can't describe it even. But the bottom line is, lakhs of people forced to migrate out, thousands died, and violence continued for 6 months in Bangladesh, many districts. It was so sort of shattering, earth-shattering violence. Jogendranath Mondol, the cabinet minister, he said that he is going to see his sick son or something like that. So basically, son is not well, we have to sort of attend to him. And he fled to Bengal. He lost everything, political clout. He lived in a very small place after that, right? So, of course, it was not a convenient decision, but it has to happen. So it shows the amount of violence, right? Cabinet minister had to flee.
Yes.
This is one stroke. And then violence is to be periodically going on. But one big stroke came in 1964 again.
Okay.
Basically, India-Pakistan tension was happening, right? War was sort of in 1965, there's a war. Before that, this is happening. And again, big violence erupted. So, there's an organization, International Commission of Jurists. They look after the different legal ways people are being discriminated. and they have found in their report that 1964 was a genocide. Forget 1971. 1964 itself was a genocide. Same thing happened in 1965. So these periodic violences were happening, and this is what I said in my book Majoritarian Myth. It is not clear to the outside media who is an aggressor, who is a victim when a violence happens, right? Who started, who wants a... But it can be inferred not from the words, not from the mouth, but from the feet. Who runs away? That guy must be the victim, right? He knows that he can't survive here.
True. True.
And you can see the Bangladeshi population from 28%, it became by 1971, before massacre, before Bangladesh, Pakistan genocide, it became 16-17%.
Yeah.
17%.
Yeah. Yeah. And today it is at what level?
Around 7%.
Yeah.
So, and what happened? 1971, the Bangladeshis, they call it Bengali genocide. They refuse to call it Hindu genocide. However, in 1971, Hindus were like 85% of the victims, even though they are 15% of the population. So one Hindu is 30 times more likely about to be killed. Now, you call it Holocaust, Hitler's massacres, right? Nazi massacres. It was not only about Jews. It was about also the socialist Germans, right? Communist Germans, right? It was also about the Poles, right? These nationalist Polish people, right? It is also about so many Slavs and Gypsies. But why we call it Holocaust?
Jewish.
Because the Jews are disproportionately targeted, right?
Yes.
Same thing here. And this is told by International Commission of Jurists as well. They said 1971 was a targeted genocide against the Hindus. But Bangladesh, they refuse it. Some simply refuse to acknowledge it. In fact, the first incident of massacre happened in 1971, 25th March, in the Jagannath Hall of Dhaka University. 66 people died there. 63 were Hindus. Again more. Another evidence. I mean, I can talk about 2 hours on these evidences. In fact, Dr. Mohit Ray was a leading activist for these Bengalis, Hindus, Bangladesh. And of course, so he is a sort of a very inspiration for a generation. He has actually organized a Bengali Hindu genocide exhibition 2-3 years ago.
Where?
In Kolkata, also in some other places in the country. Because that time Awami League was in government, in power, we sort of thought that it's good to overlook it, I suppose. So now what happened then? So basically, last evidence I'll talk about. Dr. Yvette Claire Rosser, see the researcher I talked about,
Ramraniji.
Ramraniji, yes. She visited again, and that time one Dhaka University professor became close to her. He said that he was traveling in 71 from native place to Dhaka. On the way, he got caught by the Pakistani army people. He met them. So he thought, it's going to be terrible. But these Pakistani army men, they said, no, we have not come here to kill the Muslims. It's against our religion. We have come here only to kill the Hindus. They said him openly, and this is sort of written in her thesis also. Anthony Marhenthas, who has the most authoritative book on Bangladeshi liberation, he also mentioned the same thing. Pakistani armies were saying that we have come here to teach the, Hindus a lesson. Like the Nazis, when they are coming to Poland, they are saying, we are going to trash the Jews of Poland, right? Same thing here. Some other Polish people also got caught and unfortunate, but it was mostly about the Jews, right? That's what the Nazi will sort of argue.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what is argued by Pakistan, right?
True. But given that this was very little to do with Hindus, right, and more to do with the political struggles and the power games that were going on, which you mentioned earlier, how do you rationalize it? I mean,
why Pakistan army targeted Hindus?
Yes.
Because if Hindus are gone, they wanted to create such a terror that Hindus will all leave for India.
Okay.
Like what happened in West Pakistan, right?
Right.
The moment it happens, essentially Mujib will lose again election. That was their understanding, right? Because Mujib is getting, let's say, 55%, 56% of the votes, but more than 15% is coming from the Hindus, because not only the Hindu population is 15%, possibly I told about it, but Hindu women also are voting, which is not the case for Muslim women, and also Hindus are making, they're intellectuals, so they are making public opinion and all, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So Major Khadim Hussain Raja, he was a Major General, he was there till 25 March 1971. He was more of a moderate sort of Islamist, not the strongest kind. But in his book, every page, on alternative page, there is something against the Hindus. So Hindus are all doing all the bad things in Bangladesh. So it is either has to be against Mujib. Mujib is a bad person and all, but otherwise Hindus are all bad persons.
You've mentioned in the book that it's not just the Hindus, it's also the Chakma tribes and the others who are like, maybe collateral damage.
No, but I'll tell you, I'll sort of, maybe I'll little correct you.
Okay.
Chakmas were sort of got some hit in Pakistani regime, but it was nothing compared to what happened in Bangladesh time.
After 71.
After 71. And in 71, what happened? The Chakma MP, member of parliament, was their king, Raja Tridip Roy. Raja Tridip Roy, the Chakma king, he sort of sided with the Pakistani establishment. Now, I don't know the entire story. I could only reason out from my understanding. He figured out that the local Bengali speaking Muslims, they are not at all very sort of sympathetic or kind to Chakmas. Absolutely on the contrary. But so now the Pakistani army is coming to fight them. There is no point of the Chakmas to be involved in this conflict. So he wanted to keep it away. Some Chakma youth, and youth people are sort of emotional, right? They went to the Mujib party, right? And what happened? Then the Mukti Joddhas, they won. Mukti Joddhas are coming back. And the Chakmas tried to greet them. No, you are sort of won, we have got the land. And the Mukti Joddhas showered bullets on them, on the people who were trying to guard them. And
this is documented?
This is documented by one Chakma journalist, Sharadindu Shekhar Chakma, in his book. And of course, Sharadindu Mukherjee has a book on Chakma genocide. So here he has this journalist, Sharadindu Shekhar Chakma, he has sort of written and all these sort of things, evidence. The only point is, when if you talk to a leftist, you talk about the marginalized people has to be always believed. Then why not this be applicable to the Chakmas?
True. So this is quite a revelation for most people, I think.
Yes.
That this is the kind of belief and the narrative which has taken grip of, or which has always been in control of the Bangladeshi Muslims.
One possibility is that geostrategically, India had no better option but to recognize Mujib, in spite of knowing whatever he is doing. I'm just talking from a very hard political geostrategic point of view. So they let that narrative continue. Even though they have to do something, still they have to sort of do something, right, for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think that there's the expiry date of every idea. And that expiry date has come for that idea now.
Yes.
This has to be understood by all concerned people.
Yes. Absolutely. No, I think, again, going back to the parallels, this is the same kind of situation in Kashmir also, where there may have been certain compulsions, political compulsions, geopolitical reasons for the Indian state to mollycoddle the local Muslims. But that time has gone. I mean, I think 1990 was a watershed event where your last representatives in the valley were chucked out or killed. And after that, things should have flipped in terms of how the population, the perception of the local Kashmiris is projected in the mainstream, among the mainstream Hindus of India. But that has not happened except in terms of popular culture maybe, or through social media. But the state continues to hold the same kind of line. And I think with that also, I agree with you that that is an obsolete paradigm and things should move on.
Otherwise, there is no other way.
Yeah, because otherwise it becomes very dangerous, as we saw in the Pahalgam incident. That if the state continues to say that it's all okay, but people are very nice and welcoming, then someone will pay with their life and blood.
So what happens that it is one thing to say something for the sake of convenience to the outside people. But inside you need to know the reality and address it in a long-term way. Unfortunately for the Indian state, I don't see that happening in a big way.
Yes. So what do you think that would be the way for the Indian state to deal with the Bangladesh crisis as of today?
Okay, very good question. First and foremost, after the 1950 big genocide against the Hindus, what should have happened is basically there's a pact happened that is called the Liaquat-Nehru Pact.
Yeah, right.
And they said that we'll protect the respective minorities. That has not been adhered to at all till 1971. And because Bangladesh is going back to the same ideas, and of course they have also done the same thing but in a much more moderate way, much more sort of a cogent way, much more deceptive way, the same continuation of slowly moving out the inconvenient minorities. That fact has been violated. It has to be understood.
Yes.
Because that fact has been violated, Bangladesh must give the fair share to the displaced minorities and also the persecuted minorities within. So there has to be a sort of a way of I would say the Lebensraum, or the Muslims, they are claiming Lebensraum in Assam and other places, but it has to be other way around. The displaced Hindu refugees in CAA Act and otherwise, right? And the inside persecuted people, they need an autonomous region. That has to be carved out.
Yes.
And all security has to be given to them.
Yes.
I think this is the beginning of a dialogue. This should be a beginning of a dialogue.
Yes.
Then the other party will understand that a dialogue is necessary. Now what is coming in Bangladesh, there are two parties. One is this Awami League. To their credit, they are moderate people. Moderate. They have an Islamist agenda, but very, very long time one and moderate. The other side, I would say the Jamaat side, this is more of an extreme. They want to do Holocaust sort of situation right now, this sort of a thing, right? Now, the secular Bangladeshi Muslims, I have a strongest respect for them. I have dedicated my book to them, the humanists, but they don't matter in the national narrative at the end of the day. They have to leave the world or leave Bangladesh. That's sort of the plain story, right? Now, these two people, there's a tussle going on. Now, the moment we sort of give a pushback to Bangladeshis, they will understand that this extremism is not the right way. And a lot of these things will be converted to moderates, and then possibly a dialogue will begin.
But what role does the state have to play? Do you think that the Indian state should facilitate a dialogue and bring up this issue of the genocide of Hindus,
I think
which it is certainly not doing? I mean, of course, there is a moral case to it.
There is a moral case to it, but I am talking about a geostrategic case to it. The point is, unless we bring it up, we hushed it up because we did not want to displease the Mujib regime, which is doing sort of a decent job for us, because they did not do export terrorism and all, right? But now that is not happening. And Al-Qaeda inspired terrorists, they have been released from jail and possibly told them, do something here, right? That sort of a thing is happening.
Correct.
Now, this situation, we have to create a new narrative. The narrative of Hindu persecution and minority Chakma persecution, minority persecution in Bangladesh, and a moral case for them. But morality without force is absolutely meaningless. Those who cry for victimhood, they have a sort of a solid power. They cry for victimhood, then they capture things. That is how the other side sort of works, right? But then in our case also, we have to put the case and then use the power to settle for justice. If you don't do that, then what will happen? There is no emptiness there is no vacuum in the nature. If you don't claim our power, China will do or America will do, and it will create Indian state even more harm.
Yeah, true. So I think that there is a case for a lesser Bangladesh rather than a greater Bangladesh.
There has to be.
Yeah.
Because I'll make this case with Abul Mansur Ahmed, the very journalist politician, right, who was close to Mujib. He was a very balanced person. It will look like he was like almost an atheist sort. You can't not say really, I'm an atheist in a Muslim society, that's dangerous. But otherwise he looks like views are like that. He said, I'm not Islamic, I'm only celebrate my Muslimness, right? Like Khusban Singh used to wear a turban in spite of being an atheist, that sort of a thing, right? Now he says, Bangladesh is founded upon the same Rahul resolution Pakistan is founded upon. He said that categorically. So the idea of Lahore resolution and Pakistan did not die. And Lahore resolution, interestingly, it does not say one state. It says autonomous states. There's a plural there. Some say typo, some say I don't know. But he says that because there is a states, so there is a west state, there is a west Pakistan, Pakistan, and east side we have Bangladesh. So both are founded upon the idea, same idea. He's openly saying it. So from that point of view, would you really want to have a Pakistan, or would you want to make it less?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that means that this reminds me of an important point that I didn't ask you about, was this land grab in the garb of land reform and land sealing. What was that about?
So this is a myth.
I must again repeat myself that this is what happened in Kashmir as well.
How is it? I know Barkha that she said, other people must have said also.
No, I'm saying that this happened, that there was this land sealing act by Sheikh Abdullah and he actually grabbed a lot of Hindu land.
I see. No, but here it is more interesting. Bangladesh, there is occasionally in the international media, things leak out that Hindu lands are being grabbed under Pakistani Act, essentially. It is called Enemy Property Act. Now it has been renamed as Vested Property Act under Mujib, but the same sort of act. No difference. No effective difference. So when these sort of news leak out, Amartya Sen says, well, here's a land reform going on and Hindus are rich, that's why they are losing land. So it looks like a socialist project, right? Now this myth has been punctured by another economist, not a Nobel laureate one, but more of a real life one. It is Dr. Abul Barkat of Dhaka University. He has shown using statistics that this land grab made more than half of the Hindus landless. Now, is it a socialist policy really to make people landless from having land? It's the other way, right? Landless will become land with land.
Right. No, so it's the same patterns, yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this, towards the end of your book, you have mentioned about this identity crisis of the Bangladeshi Muslim. What is that about?
This is a long story, but I know you're a patient person. I hope the audience is patient as well. But it starts in the 19th century.
Okay.
That time, the Atrap class, they used to do Lakshmi Puja. So Muslims in Bengal used to perform Lakshmi Puja, all the Hindu sort of rituals there, Atrap class. This is not I am saying. One of the Bengali poet, Jasimuddin, he was with Muslim League. So he was a Muslim League poet in my sense, right? He said that in his own autobiography. So there's a very syncretic culture at that time. Muslims, they never used to kill, this Atrap class, they did not kill the cows. They used to love cows, and this has been also there in a story of Sarat Chandra Chakrabarti. So this is sort of going on. Now, who did not like it? The Ashraf class. Because if there is a syncretic culture, what is the need for Ashraf class for guidance? How they would sort of claim their respect, right? So there is a reformism movement started by Titumir, Haji Saritullah, Faraisi movement, and all these sort of things. Who said that we have to go back to the literal Islam, right? That sort of a narrative started dominating. Now, what happened? The leftists, one thing they are right. it is not in the religious books what is written. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's a narrative sort of that governs the society. But the problem is they celebrate Titu Mir as a sort of a hero. Whereas the Karl Marx himself said Titu Mir is a religious fanatic. And this Titu Mir narrative became very, very strong, which eventually led Salimullah, the Nawab of Dhaka, to start Muslim League. In fact, Mujib, in his own autobiography, he is saying, I have learned about Titu Mir, I have learned about Saritullah, I know about the Farazi movement, and this is sort of I belong from.
Okay.
I belong to. That's what he said.
Okay. He's identifying with that.
He's identifying with that.
Right.
So, and then what happened, the moment this started happening, so for example, in the 1920s, one of the leading cultural icon is Syed Mustafa Ali. He was actually a first graduate of Rabindranath Tagore's Vishwabharati University, Vishwabharati Vishwavidyalaya. There, I think in school, when he was in school, he read an essay on Eid. Eid as a festival. And that sort of was novel to many people because Eid was not really celebrated by the, that time Muslims in large numbers. Now, what happened? The moment these Ashrafs, they started claiming this thing. Now, what happened before 1970, in the 19th century, Ashraf class, they never spoke Bengali. They used to speak, the Persian or Urdu, that sort of a language. And the Ashraf class, they used to speak Bengali like Bengali Hindu, no problem. But now they are trying to claim this. So, there is a speech by Syed Ahmed Khan in Meerut in 1880s. And he is saying Bengal, half the people are Bengalis, half the people are Mohammedans. So, the idea of the Bengali Muslim was not there. It was Mohammedans or Bengalis, right? Now, they are trying to join a bridge between the Ashraf and Ashraf class. The language has to be bridged. And the language of Bengali language is to be sort of being changed by infusion of Arabic words and all, right?
Of course, yeah.
And this was actually creating an identity crisis because the Ashraf class, they are happy with their Indian civilizational heritage, right? Qazi Nazrul Islam, he was a sort of a very syncretic Muslim poet. He was Muslim, but he was quite happy with the Indian heritage and tradition. That tradition was lost. I give an example. Qazi Nazrul celebrated Kamal Ataturk. He has a very lovely poem on him. He said that he is our hero. Now, that time the Muslims were against, Khalifa. They were the Khilafah movement. They are against Ataturk, right? In some sense of the term.
Yes.
But now what is happening? Now Bangladesh, they are with the Khilafat only. They are not with Ataturk, right? They are not with secularity.
True.
And this identity crisis happened everywhere. It happened in language. It happened in history. In history, there is a tussle between the Muslims, how they will paint themselves as a good persons. So, the most celebrated person in Bangladeshi history books is Ikhtiaruddin bin Bakhtiyar Khalji, who burned down Nalanda library. He is celebrated as the sort of social liberation, as the pioneer of social liberation and all, right? Very, very funny. There is a poet Al-Mahmud. He says in one of his poems, "Oh Bakhtiyar, you are coming, you are delivering social justice," that sort of a thing. And this guy, in another interview saying, "I cannot imagine a world without libraries." So he is celebrating someone as a hero who burned down the biggest library of those times of the world.
Right. It's a very in-your-face identity crisis.
This is the identity crisis because they cannot acknowledge that they are the persecutors. So they have to make the Hindus persecutors.
Correct.
So they have brought a theory. It is an extremely ill-digested version of Aryan invasion theory. So ill-digested, Romila Thapar or Irfan Habib, they don't endorse it. They completely criticize it. I have quoted Irfan Habib, who said that Islam in the medieval age, there is no social appeal of Islam. It was not an egalitarian thing. It was simply as discriminatory as that of those times. And nobody converted to Islam because of caste things. Irfan Habib said that. But they are bringing the social liberation theory, right? Then they are saying that, okay, Hindus were persecuting and all, and so they are the original people. Now they have changed the Encyclopedia Britannica. In the Encyclopedia Britannica, so Bengal, Bongo, is a very old name. It is there in the Vedic literature. It is also there in Mahabharata. But now in the Encyclopedia Britannica it says that Bengali nation started when a large number of people immigrated into Bengal in the 8th century, 9th century.
Oh.
In fact, so you can see the identity crisis. This is identity crisis, but now they are an identity grabbing. And Encyclopedia Britannica is acknowledging them, right?
Correct.
Justifying them. This is right before I wrote the book. This is written. This is not any history or anything like that.
Right.
BBC conducted a poll a few decades ago, 3 decades ago. Who is the greatest Bengali of 1,000 years? Firstly, why 1,000 years? Bengalis have a history of 4,000 years. Only way I can make sense is Muslims entered Bengal for the last 1,000 years apparently, and that's why, right?
Of course, yes.
Now, of course, we have great kings. We have Devopal, who sort of conquered a lot of North India and Kannauj, the capital. We have also great poets like, of course, Rabindranath Tagore. Of course, we have also Chandidas, who said that, who was the humanist in the medieval age. He said that above all, only the man lies. So man is sort of the highest thing, he said. We have so many figures. We have the revered figures like Sri Chaitanya. We have figured like Raja Ram Mohan Roy. We have figured like Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, who was essentially the first premier of undivided India, right? Azad Hind Fauj Sarkar, right? Now, all these people were skipped, and the greatest Bengali is Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So it is an institutional way of claiming the identity from the West Bengali or Bengali Hindus to the Bangladeshis, right? Who calls themselves Bengali and Hindus Indians.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, I would like to keep going on because this is a rabbit hole. But in the interest of time, I just want to ask you one last question, and which is related to identity crisis itself. Not of the Bengali Muslim, but of the Bengali Hindu.
Exactly. I ended my book with a quote by Tagore. The occasion was, there is a big hall called Mahajati Sadan. So it was sort of first national hall, and it was planned by Netaji Subhash Bose. It was inaugurated in the sense that the founding stone was sort of put down that day, 1939, by Rabindranath Tagore. He spoke on that occasion, and he said, if Bengal, I'm just paraphrasing, I cannot have the sweetness of his words. If Bengal is driven by a tyrannical mindset and considers itself separate from India, Bharat, that will sort of destroy Bengalis. There is no way a Bengal exists that is separate from Bharat. That is what the Tagore is saying, nobody else, right? The greatest Bengali for all Hindu Bengalis, I'm pretty sure about it. Now, there are a class of people. Now, what is happening in Bengal? I'll give you also a 2-minute gist of our intellectual evolution. Bengal, in some sense, just pardon me if I sound immodest, was the best province of India.
Yes.
Because Gopal Krishna Gokhale, a non-Bengali, said that, right? What Bengal thinks today, India will think.
True.
Then we have become communists. It happened a small way first, but after the refugee crisis, politically, communists became the very big power. And they destroyed all whatever is known as classical Bengal. Now, what is happening? Because it is this culture is lost, the idea of going back to their own roots, you can call it Hindu root or you can call it Bharat, the civilizational root, whatever way you call it, it was unthinkable for the elite Bengalis. They could see themselves as communists or cultural communists or liberals. The lower echelon of the Hindu Bengalis, they are very decent people. They are very honest and sincere people. But they are leaderless because the leaders are rooted in West, the communism and cultural communism, right? If Bengal has to come back to claim their own place, I'm a very, very proud Bengali. As a proud Bengali, I'm saying that we have to forget about this communism which is only there for last 100 years, never before. And we have to go back to our root, which have been told by Tagore and others, And if you want to do that, that's how we will claim our identity back. Right? We have to go back to Bharat. That's the only way possible. Now, what is happening in Bengal? These cultural commies and other things, some of them are not happy with the current establishment and all, which is a sort of a very intellectually shallow thinking, very sort of corrupt thinking. So they are going for separatism. They are calling it Joy Bangla, and they are sort of calling for a sort of a partitioned way of thinking. Sometimes they are equating themselves, I mean, a lot of the times they are equating themselves with Bangladesh, which is pretty stupid. But what happened? This parasite of communism, it made us sort of brainless. I mean, it stopped us from thinking well, right?
Yeah.
Now, here is the problem with my other right-wing or Indic friends from all over the India, other than Bengal. If anything happens in Bengal, they say Bengalis are the worst people. That is sort of the right-wing crude way of putting things. Now, suppose someone get a fever, would you criticize that person or the fever, right? Would you treat that person, or would you sort of, we say that you are a bad person because you are having fever? So the idea of communism and cultural communism that made Bengal this pathetic situation, that has to be criticized. But Bengalis has to be sort of understood that they are a pioneer, and most of them, even today, most Bengalis, they are actually very good people, sincere people. They are just clueless or leaderless.
True. No, this I've heard consistently from people who know Bengal very well, that if you go to rural Bengal, you will find the most staunch Hindus, and it is only in the more left-leaning intelligentsia, which dominates the news and the media bites, that you have such deluded ideas floating. But otherwise, deep down inside, it's still very, very Hindu, the identity. Unfortunately, the political scene is such that, you cannot blame people for making political choices that are obvious, and if there is a lack of choice, you will go for that.
No, but even then, if you look at the majority voting pattern, majority of the Hindu Bengalis, Muslim Bengalis, they might have a very similar narrative to Bangladeshi, who knows? But the Hindu Bengalis, they are majority of them, a large majority of them, they are not voting for the current establishment and current sort of way, right? It is not that their vote may be a percentage, but it is not their vote that is critical, right?
Correct. That's right. So yeah. So thank you very much for discussing your book, and I would urge the viewers to buy and read this extremely important book, and I would request Kaushik ji to please write his next book quickly, because I know you just told me that you have 4 or 5 more books in your head, and we would like to see them coming out on paper as soon as possible, because this is what the discourse of this country really needs. You need books like this. You need well thought through positions stated articulately, and if that does not happen, then we have only you to blame.
Thank you, Ashish, and I always learn from you. In some sense, you are also my inspiration, the way you work. I have many gurus like Abdut. You are only one of them, but you are one of them. The other thing is, of course, I request my readers to put some sort of a, in Amazon, just write some review, just rate it. Otherwise, what happens, I don't actually make very sort of extreme comments or sort of sensitive comments. And then in this age of social media, then these voices will be lost, and my books will not be read by anyone. Sure. I don't really want to say on every occasion, but the thing I do with a lot of effort and time, I want people to read.
Absolutely. And we will do our best to also derive as much as we can from your works, and to make people more aware about what you have been working on, what you have written out there. So thank you again for coming and talking about your new book. Thank you for writing this book, and we'll see you soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you.